Now, people would say, wait a minute, Andy, wait a minute, Dinesh, in the Capitol, 5 people died in this insurgency. Now, I think it's important to.
Okay, all right. That's plus one. That's plus one. No, that was darling. I don't care what any of you say. That was absolutely darling. I am here for that. Okay, I'm giving for everything horrible he's about to say, for all the lies, all the maliciousness. He gets a plus one for that. All right, let's get back to Andy No. Gotta talk about Andy No, everybody. This is a huge story for a number of reasons. There's already a twist. Andy No has a book coming out, so he's doing the book tour. We're gonna see a lot of Andy No all over the place. But hey, there's good news. There's good news on the horizon. I'm gonna save the twist for the very end. All right, it's gonna be like an M. Night Shyamalan experience. So you know there's a twist coming up. You know there is, because there's always a twist in his movies. But at the same time, hopefully it'll delight you and amaze you. We'll see. All right. Before, just as a preview, I want to bring up the fact that Andy No is downplaying the Holocaust in one of his interviews about his book, trying to say that Antifa and the attacks by Antifa are comparable to the Nazis. And yet he has a sentence where it's like, well, at least the Nazis, that should never be something that comes out of your mouth. You should never be, well, at least the Nazis did blank. All right. Like, come on.
Seeing these people so openly carry out wanton violence with no shame. Like, we can look back on history and in the 20th century, the most shameful act is the Holocaust. And even the Nazis knew to hide their tracks because what they were doing was so evil.
What happened to his accent, by the way? Where did that go? Did he listen to the criticism? Did he listen to all the people saying, like, by the way, your fake accent is really strange? And so now I believe he's toned it down a little bit. I mean, it's still there, but it's definitely not as prevalent. It's definitely not as prevalent. All right.
We didn't learn about the atrocities of what was happening in the World War II to Jewish people and other targeted groups until the war was over. Whereas these Antifa people, they do it in the open. They have no shame.
So if you didn't catch that, basically he's saying that Antifa and the attacks carried out by Antifa are brazen. And they're so brazen that they kind of he's juxtaposing it with the Holocaust and saying at least the Nazis did what they did in secret, which is a strange thing to say because no, it isn't. People knew about what was going on. That's just historically inaccurate. Wild things to be saying. But hey, go off, King. Tell us more. Anyways, he's got a new book out. He's doing the tours. He's getting in the limelight. Let's hear a little bit what he has to say about his brand new book. What's it called? Unmasked: Inside Antifa's Radical Plan to Destroy Democracy.
Inside Antifa's radical plan to destroy democracy. I'm just diving into it. It's fascinating, Andy. It pulls you into a whole world that if you were just following the national media, you wouldn't even know existed. Why do you think that mainstream journalists are so reluctant to cover Antifa? They pretend, in a sense, they give fuel to Joe Biden's absurd statement that Antifa is merely an idea, as if to say it's a theory without any concrete manifestation on the ground. What's going on here?
Well, it's no surprise to you and your listeners and viewers that the mainstream journalists and the legacy media have been really overtaken by people who are liberal and on the left. Now, the issue that arises with Antifa is that they had a mutual enemy in the Trump administration in 2016, believing either through ignorance or actually through just zealotry that this was a sign of ascendant American fascism. So what I saw and I write about in the book is media willingly or unwillingly working hand in hand to propagate and mainstream tenets of Antifa's ideology.
There you have it, sheeple.
They do provide some coverage of Antifa, but when they do, they call them anti-fascists who are opposing far-right and neo-Nazis without mentioning.
It's really bizarre. They call Antifa anti-fascists. It's strange. I'm not sure where that comes from, where they would get that idea, but that's basically the media, trying to whitewash the entire thing. Where would they would get that? Because it's clearly Antifa, okay? I don't know why they have to add that in, this colorization, but sure.
Their acts of domestic terrorism against citizens, against the state, against property. There's I think you can look at the disparate coverage, particularly in how the rioters on the 6th of January in the Capitol Hill siege, how they have been portrayed in the press versus the rioters in Portland, Oregon, where I'm from, who for more than 120 days tried to.
Now, I just want to say one thing, because a lot of people have been saying, hey, you use whataboutism too much. What about just compare and contrast? And that's true. You can compare and contrast. But if you're comparing and contrasting as a way of downplaying the actions of one group, especially if it's going to be a false equivalency, well, that's where the whataboutism comes in. If someone is like, hey, what about, instead of just saying, well, that was bad. What happened on January 6th was bad, definitely.
Or actually did set fire to property that was inhabited by law enforcement and city staff, came with explosives and knives and guns to riot night after night.
Now, people would say, wait a minute, Andy, wait a minute, Dinesh, in the Capitol, 5 people died in this insurgency. Now, I think it's important.
Okay, all right, that's plus one. That's plus one. No, that was darling. I don't care what any of you say. That was absolutely darling. I am here for that. Okay, I'm giving for everything horrible he's about to say, for all the lies, all the maliciousness. He gets a plus one for that. Okay, that. Good use of props, good use having it ready there, to get everything. Come on.
To zoom into these 5 people, because one of them, Ashley Babbitt, was shot in the neck by a policeman. As I understand it, 3 other people had medical conditions. They were all among the so-called insurgents or protesters. They died. 1 policeman died, and it was initially reported that he had been hit on the head with a fire extinguisher, but those reports have been questioned, and his own family, as I've seen, has challenged this account and basically said that's not what happened, and we just want to keep this matter private. Bottom line, it looks like, even though AOC has been going around saying that she was in
Just finish the sentence. By the way, odd to see him questioning police accounts. But anyways, first time for everything. And then on top of that, adding that little part at the end is like, the family specifically said that they wish this to remain private, the thing that I'm talking about right now, full well knowing that that was their wishes. And yet I'm trying to be on their side in what I'm saying out loud right now. But yes, forget about what I've just said.
Terror of her life, and people were out to kill her, and she was on the verge of being murdered. The truth of the matter is that the deaths were all on the side of the protesters. Now, I only say this by way of background. How would you
well, except for the cop that was just like ripped apart with like their bare hands. And unless you're suggesting that he was on the side of the protesters. Ah, Dinesh, interesting.
This level of violence, and I would say incitement to Trump incitement, let's march on the Capitol, let's be peaceful and patriotic. That was allegedly Trump's incitement. Talk about the violence and incitement on the Antifa side and on the part of leading Democrats.
Yeah, I wonder why.
I'm gonna be honest. For Andy, no, at that point I would have been like, "This is pretty fucking front loaded, my dude. You've tasked me with quite a few things, but hey, no, I'm ready. I can take this on."
Memories are so short. I've been very clear in my condemnation of the political violence that happened on the 6th of January, and it was deadly, and people died needlessly for that. However, the riots that occurred throughout America last year by BLM and Antifa, allegedly in the name of racial justice, more than 24 people died there. And some of them were killed by murderers. In my city, in Portland, the riots, at the height of them, at the end of August, an Antifa militant actually sought out a Trump supporter in downtown Portland and shot him in cold blood and fled to a different state before being killed by federal authorities. So I wonder why the lives of the people who were lost last year don't seem to matter to those who are now talking about how serious everything was on the 6th of January, which it was, but be consistent, and they're not, which is why their condemnations are hollow.
I mean, citation needed aside, the comparing of the two, it's a little unusual. It's a little strange that this is the road they're going to be going down right now, where it's like, well, I don't understand why all of you are so upset, or you're so upset about what happened, when really I never saw you once upset with Antifa, who all year has been terrorizing the United States. If we look at the actual counts and the reports on this statistically, they were 93 to 95% peaceful. That's for millions and millions of Americans across the entire country protesting. That's That's amazing. For the amount that the media was reporting on how there was rioters and there was damage and destruction and entire cities were on fire. Did you not see how many Wendy's and Targets were destroyed in the process of the entire thing? The fact that it was almost 93 to 95% peaceful, that speaks volumes towards what was mostly a peaceful demonstration across the United States, a movement that is continuing to this day.
Andy, we have seen in Europe, you have to go back almost a century, paramilitaries, which arose as the sort of street gangs, but these weren't just loafers or random people on the street. What you really had is these paramilitaries were attached to political parties. So, for example, the black shirts to Mussolini's Socialist Party.
Before I get into this gibberish, how many of you like to put posters of all the shitty movies you've made behind you when you talk to other people? Did you ever do that? Do you ever line your walls with posters of all your shitty movies just so they know? Just so they're like, oh yeah, you're that Dinesh D'Souza. Cool, bro. Cool.
The brown shirts to Hitler's National Socialist Party. Would it be an exaggeration to say that Antifa and perhaps to a certain degree BLM are the paramilitary wing of the Democratic Party?
I'm reluctant to call it that. However,
that one was too far. Wow. Okay, so we do have a bar. Hey, I mean, he set you up for that one. Wow, what a whiff. What a whiff. Set the whole thing up. Oh man, couldn't get it home, could you? All right.
I think it's important for you to look at the historical context of how a militant movement and organizations like Antifa rise up. And I appreciate that in your documentaries, you talk about the history from the 20th century. This is important. You don't have groups like Antifa just coming out of the blue. They're extremely organized, and they also follow a certain legacy, direct lineage to the paramilitary of the German Communist Party in interwar years. So they're
so they're not the brown shirts. They're the Communist Party of Nazi Germany. Slight correction there.
There is precedent to their political violence, to the brawling on the streets, to attacking political opponents for wrong thing. And the important thing to mention about the original Antifa, the paramilitary of the German Communist Party, is that the people they called fascists, they didn't just call Nazis fascists. That's obvious. They actually targeted with violence the Social Democrats, the center-left party. So from its inception to today,
his cursory glancing of Wikipedia is paying off nicely now, except for the fact that he's basically again describing the ones that fought the fascists, the ones that fought against the Nazis. That's the people that you're describing. Yes, if you want to say that they come from a long lineage of that, well, I mean, that's not exactly the burn you think it is. I'm trying to understand what Dinesh D'Souza, I mean, I know they're trying to colorize the entire thing as Antifa equals Nazis equals Holocaust. That's basically like the theme of the conversation. But still, they're getting a little muddled in their comparisons.
This label of fascist has always just been used to mean any person or institution or group that opposes.
So the label isn't fascists, it's anti-fascists, as in those who oppose fascism.
Their political extremist ideology.
Now, Andy, I finally have to congratulate you because in a brilliant book marketing move, you have evidently orchestrated Antifa protests against your book. They mobilized at the Powell's, the kind of legendary bookstore in Portland, and I was looking at the way that Powell's was sort of responding to that. Now, I can only imagine this is going to help your book sales, which I think is...
Yeah. I think I'm kind of done on the interview because I had some other information on this. So, Emily Gorczynski is apparently featured prominently in the book. And I didn't know if everyone knew about this, but he's got some writing on it. Kelly wrote, another far-left writer, Betts interacted with Emily Gorczynski, a writer formerly known as, oh shit, you dead named her in your novel. Gorczynski gained notoriety among Antifa and left-wing circles for identifying and releasing the personal details of people she says are alt-right. She also has expressed support for extremism on social media. She calls for the far left to embrace weapons. This is an Antifa doctrine that appealed to Betts. Well, on top of everything, it looks like Andy No is gonna have to lawyer up. Awesome. And there's the twist that I'm sure Andy never saw coming. Yeah. I'm going to guess for a wee bit of libel. Just a tiny bit of libel. We'll see. We'll see. And we're off. And Noah just fucked up big time. Prior to release, Emily Gorczynski had speculated whether Noah would write about her. Turns out he did. Along with dead naming her, Noah accuses Emily of supporting extremism. See Emily's response here. I love this. Fantastic. Get his ass. If you want us to advertise your channel or work, please go to weareserfs.com and email us a 20 to 30 second ad, and we'll take it on to the end of one of our videos to help promote your leftist channel or progressive something. Whatever you do.
To our gods, I'm Raph, Xander Corvus, and Schlatsky. We shall build golden idols in your honor. To our monarch, Tom Spiker, you have our undying fealty. To our lords, Jeffrey Lamb, Trevor R., Hans Josephine, C. Bartlett, Jimothy K. Meeple Beeps Jr., Bisexual Black Gamer, and Trofox, we shall carry your banners onto the battlefield. To our Knights of the Round Table, Josh Mickelson, Dylan Byth, Zach Christensen, Todd Buckingham, Todd Lajeunesse, Political Puppy, Jimmy Bignuts, Andreas Chitoro, Good Poon Hates Cops, That's Solid Poon Then, Dr. Zayas, Yoppie, Violent Orchard, Sophie Baby, Thomas Barrington, J. Fraser Cartwright, Goofalankius, Melissa Murphy, Nicholas Marks, Alexander Thaler, Ali Rada Jafer, Alex Gauvin, Radical Maniac, The Great Houdini, and Callie Kotka. We salute you.